Hi, and welcome to another edition of Cal's World. I'm Cal Anderson, a Lynn resident and local activist and a volunteer here at Lynn Community TV. And I'm going to do my usual pitch. Now that the members started to do more of our own programming in the evenings, we need people to staff cameras and staff the sound and just do a lot of little things around. We need stage hands, etc. So come down, join. If you're already a member, talk to the folks out front, ask for me, and I'll put you to work. We record every other Wednesday night, and we can talk more about that. I'm just giving the pitch out, but it's fun. You can do real TV and then get your feet wet and start your program of your own. So today we've got a pretty busy show. We've got, first, you probably see by the virtual set behind us, we're going to be talking about Lynn's GEM, our GAR hall. We're going to talk about that and the new drive to do some renovations to it to stabilize it and just bring it into the 21st century, because it needs some work. But where do you hear about some of the stuff that goes on in there? And it's a living history in addition to a lot of just artifacts about the Civil War. We also have Dexter Bishop, Kevin Tucker, Charles Lewis, and Al Smith, and they're members of the SUVCW, which is Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. And they're going to tell you a little bit about that. It's kind of fascinating. I ran into Kevin Tucker, who's the center back there, at a Lincoln Day event in Wakefield back in February, and I just said, why don't you come on the show? So we're putting this together. So first of all, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to start with Dexter, because you're point person in Lynn, and you know a lot about the GAR Hall. What's going on, and what are we looking forward to coming up for events over the next few months? Because summer seems to be when a lot of things are happening.
Yes, this is a real busy season. Starting this month, we will be having our department encampment the 20th and 21st of April.
Now, an encampment, that's actually what I've seen reenactors encamping on our commons?
No, it's an encampment, yes, but we are not reenactors. We are, we study and we work for preservation and education. And the gentlemen here in uniform, they are the SVR, and that's Veterans Reserve for the Sons.
You got your hand on Charles Lewis.
Yeah, and Charles Lewis.
Welcome, Charles.
Thank you, everybody.
And Al Smith over there.
Hi, Al. Speak up.
Nice to see you.
All right. We got the handheld mic. They're going to be passing it around a little later.
Yeah. Charlie is also camp commander for Camp 22. And that's over at the Chelsea Soldiers Home. That was started by the Grand Army of the Republic in 1887 or something like that. 82. So that's another whole new story. But focusing on Lynn, the hall that we presently have is just like it was when the last veteran walked out the door, never to return.
I've been in there, and it smells vintage. Like you go into an old church or a meeting house in New England, it's got those authentic smells. And there's no elevator yet.
Right.
And there's a big, long set of steps that goes up. But once you're up there, what do they find, Dexter?
They find the main meeting hall that was, it's roughly 80 feet long by about 45, 50 feet wide.
And very tall ceilings.
And very tall ceilings. And it's all original. There's original rugs, original furniture. The chandeliers are magnificent. They were made for both electric and gas at the same time. You could use one or the other. Originally, the veterans didn't think the electricity would last. They thought it was a phase. Although they were the first ones to have electricity in their building. They had a dynamo in the basement to provide the electricity for those.
In Lynn?
In Lynn, yes.
Is that another first for our city?
I would say, yeah, I would say so,
it's
yeah.
It's up there. We'll challenge it. Find one earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the hall itself, it's, when you go in, you are overwhelmed by what you see. There's the capstan from the USS Kearsarge. And it so happens that one of the members of the hall, of the post at that time, was recipient of the Medal of Honor for what he did during the battle when the Kearsarge sank the CSS Alabama,
Really?
which was a raider.
A Lynn hero.
Actually, he was out of Maine.
Maine?
Yeah, but he moved to Lynn back in the days of 80s and 90s of in the 1800s. Shoe industry was very large, and people came from all over to Lynn to find work.
It was a destination even from Maine.
Yes. Oh, lots of Maine. All of the New England states had individuals that.
It was part of our history and heritage.
Yes, very much so. It was a big attraction to come down here and work in the shoe industry.
So the top room or hall, if you will,
Yeah.
that is replete with how many, and what do we see when you get up there? This is what makes everybody gasp when they first go up for the first time. They look and say, I didn't know this was up here.
Yeah,
What
there
are
are 1,143 pictures of the veterans. The life of the hall, there was 1,800 members. However, they ran out of room at 1,143.
Wow.
1,100, yeah.
And these are all uniform size, like I'd say 8.5 by 11 like
Yeah,
that today, but
right.
they're all up and around.
Right.
And I understand you had to, some of the trustees were cataloging them with a telescope so they could read the names very tiny.
They were actually from the Lynn Camera Club, and they volunteered to come in and take and digitize all of those pictures. We even have one picture, and we always have people try to see if they can find it, and that is a picture of a gentleman who was in his casket, and they took his picture and put it.
It's up there
It's
somewhere?
up there somewhere, yeah.
Like where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
We have 3 pictures of individuals from the 54th, the first all-black regiment out of Massachusetts.
Oh, and they have the bas relief across from the State House. And the movie Glory was written about, made about them.
That's correct,
With
yeah,
Matthew Broderick and
yeah.
Denzel Washington.
Yeah, in 2015, we did, the Sons of Union Veterans did a program where we brought back into the State House we had 20 plus reproductions in flags, and some of the reenactors came with their flags.
Wonderful.
And did a big flag march up. And we were very fortunate. We got it to go through the front door of the State House, which, as you
got
know,
pictures of all that. And
well, we were on the front page of the Globe.
yeah, that counts. That's like being in perpetuity.
Yes, yeah.
Now, Kevin's going to tell us a little more about the Sons of Union Veterans of Civil War. So tell us about that.
So our group is descendants of Civil War veterans, and we are the heirs to the Grand Army of the Republic. After the Civil War, the veterans got together and started a veterans group to push for veterans benefits and those kind of things, and they called it the Grand Army of the Republic.
So that's where the GAR
biggest-
started. Okay,
Exactly.
all right.
To be a member of the GAR, however, you had to be a Civil War soldier. So eventually, you would,
They just
it would
died
die out, right? So they, in 1881, so that was 1866 when the GAR was started. In 1881, they designated the Sons of Union Veterans as their heir, and allowed us to carry on their work. Now, the GAR veterans were around actually till 1954.
Wow.
The last one died. But from 1881 up until now, we carry on their work, and it's historic preservation. So when it comes time to, that monuments are cracking or falling apart, we work with community leaders to get those repaired. We repair gravestones. We preserve documents and artifacts. We perform ceremonies. We perform at Bourne National Cemetery every year on Memorial Day. And by the way, Memorial Day was started by the Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic in General Order 11, designating, they called it at the time, Decoration Day for the decoration of graves.
You know, my late
Into
mother called it till today. She died in her 90s. She still called it Decoration
Day, right. But now we know it as Memorial Day.
You're right.
And so
It's been broadened to observe all wars, and people just use it for private remembrances in cemeteries too.
Sure. So,
But it all started with the Civil War.
that's right. The Grand Army of the Republic gave us 5 presidents of the United States. At one point, they had so much political power that to be a Republican nominee, and of course, after the war, the Republicans were in charge of the country, you had to have the endorsement of the GAR, or you would not make it.
Very powerful
So
group.
they had their day, and that's past. Our job, the organization's job, is to keep that memory alive, let people know what they do, and of course, the Lynn GAR Hall is a shining example. I mean, if everybody could see that, you could feel the immense power that they had. How the amount of wealth that they had, the camaraderie, some of the stories that are there are amazing.
Well, let me tell you one of the best things. Just a few days ago, when we're recording this, our station, LCTV, launched a good 4-minute piece interviewing Bob Mathias of the GAR.
Yeah.
He's curator?
Yes.
But they interviewed him and got enough in 4 minutes to whet your appetite, and we've been describing these rooms and these artifacts, but you can see it in the 4-minute piece. So go to the LCTV Facebook or YouTube page, and I think it's just community connection. It's about the GAR Hall. So I'm encouraging viewers to watch that, because you'll hear a lot about what they were just talking about.
Right.
And the important thing is it is open to the public. It's not regular hours, but it's easy.
Yeah.
And to call Bob Mathias or whoever and make an appointment to visit. They encourage groups to do it, especially.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is there a phone number to call that you know of off the top of your
Yeah.
head in case we didn't get it on the screen?
It's, let's see, 781. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, okay, but if all the more reason to tune into
Right.
the GAR piece on Lynn Community TV, because it's all there.
Yes,
But
yeah.
I'm just telling you, this is just whetting your appetite, but you should really see that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. We've got 2 minutes for this segment left, and we're going to introduce Dr. Fisher with her art. We'll talk a little bit about contemporary psychology. Yeah. But either of you want to wrap up something
Well,
here?
I would like to say one thing about the hall itself in the fact and the veterans that were there. In 1890, they had assets of $90,000, which was an awful lot of money back then. And the story of how they got some of it is quite lengthy, so I won't go there. But they always believed that they should take care of their own. So during the time when they were in the biggest part of their power, if you say you lived and lost your job, you didn't go home and tell the wife. You went to the hall if you were a veteran, and then you went home and told your wife about your new job.
Taking care of your own.
That's right. Then that $90,000 in assets, after they turned the hall over in 1919, with the acts of 1919 to the city, we have records showing that every week they had cut the town up into wards, we'll call them, and anyone who was a veteran in a given ward would be contacted to make sure they had enough of whatever they needed. And then the person who made that contact would go to a meeting and say, so-and-so needs a ton of coal or a cord of wood, or we need to bury this person because they paid for anyone's funeral that was a veteran.
Very
and
wonderful.
Things like that. And they really took care of their own. Some great stories about things that they did. Even when it comes to the Sons of Union Veterans, they created us, and I'm sure we're running out of time.
Well, this is pretty organic show.
Okay.
So.
Well, all right. Well, there was a fire here in Lynn, and the Sons, now this is Pop over here, the veteran, and the Sons sitting here, and they went to City Hall because they were giving away grants to take care of some of the burn victims. So the Sons went over to the City Hall and got a grant to take care of some of the veterans.
Got clout.
But
What shows
the veterans themselves said to their sons, give the money back.
Proud.
We take care of our own.
Proud.
So they made them give back the money, and then told them they couldn't come in and use their hall anymore for a few years anyway. And it was 4 years before they got back into the hall.
What a great story.
Yeah, and there's lots of them like that.
Okay.
Come on down.
I've got a cute little anecdote. Get a minute? In 1890, Dexter was talking about the GAR. They had a convention in Boston, the National Convention, which they called an encampment. That's what, when Dexter mentioned the encampment, he meant convention. So in 1890, they had a convention, and Massachusetts was the host, and a little little post up in Beverly decided to give gifts to everybody that came to Massachusetts. So there was a potter in the town, and he made bean pots. And so they had the potter make a bean pot for everybody that attended. I'm not sure if you know this, but the Puritans were deep believers in not working on the Sabbath. So you would put your pot of beans on the stove, on the hearth, and leave it alone, and you wouldn't have to do any work, and you could still eat. So it was very popular in Massachusetts. So they took all these bean pots and they gave them to everybody that attended the 1890 convention. When those people left Boston, they went to their homes across the country and started calling Boston Beantown.
So that's where it started.
Yep.
That's why everybody
Okay, now
calls
you
it
heard it
Beantown.
here first, if you hadn't heard it before. I knew about Beantown, but I just learned why.
And that's why people here don't call it Beantown everywhere else in the country.
Yeah, you know, that's what happens. In New York, they don't go to visit the Statue of Liberty until somebody from out of town comes in. This has been fascinating, guys. And now we're going to, don't go anywhere, because I'm going to introduce, she's got a day job. She's a psychologist, but she's also got an interesting art. And we're going to talk a little bit about both. So my next guest, welcome to the stage. It's Dr. Eleanor Fisher. Hi, Eleanor.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, first of all, she's a psychologist by day. Now, first of all, are you in private practice, or are you affiliated with
I've been 40 years in full-time private practice.
All right.
And recently I said, well, I think I've had enough of being a full-time doctor of psychology. And now a few people I consult with. And but mostly all of the time I work on my glass shard paintings, which I brought in
We're
for
going to
you
show
with my
those in a
group.
minute, but I want to ask you a couple of
Anything.
contemporary psychology questions first.
Yes.
Now, your counterparts back in the day probably had a lot of post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, it's not just unique to modern wars.
of course.
I'm sure there was a lot of that going on.
Constant. It had to
And
be.
the Civil War, of course, was a very bloody war.
Horrible.
And dismemberments and people just blown up and things. So do you find that that's part of your clientele now? People coming from
It
wars?
always has been. I did one of my earliest internships at the VA Day Treatment Center in Boston, and that's where I was introduced to PTSD.
All right. So, plucked from the daily headlines, we can't go a few weeks or months now without having some kind of violence in a workplace, a school, extended families, homes. Can you, in just a few minutes, are there any new triggers that they're starting to see so that we can maybe start identifying such cases earlier? What do we find in our youth? Who do we say, gee, they need some extra help? How do we pick them out of the crowd at high school?
May I go back a bit with that
Sure.
question? The precursor of that question is, I'm also a family therapist. I love working with families. I love working with couples who are going to have a family. And it begins there. The children are the number one, the parents are the number one models for the children. And as the parents live, not what they say, is how the children will grow up.
You know, that's one of my old adages is don't do what I say, do what I do.
And they will.
And they watch you every minute.
And ethics
the kids
is what
always
you
watch.
do when no one is watching.
Right. It's not
And
what
the
would
kids
Jesus
know
do, is what would I
exactly
do.
what the parents
Yeah.
do. They do, and they will copy it in school, and that goes with them. So that's why I wanted to back up a bit. And what can you do? I do have some thoughts on that. You can use your voice. You can say, stop. I see what's going on. Let's stop it now. And don't be afraid. You can't be afraid to say, something is the matter. Let's have a talk. And then if you bring the parents in, God forbid the parents go into denial, oh, not my child. Well, that is just enabling more and more will grow.
Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it all boils down to having conversation and dialogue with your family, within your family, and extends to workplaces as well.
To live it.
Right.
To live it.
Okay. What do you find? I've been finding that there's sort of a dourness going on now, and it's all, I think it comes back to people starting to disconnect. They're not talking to people face to face, eye to eye anymore.
Yes.
It's all texting.
Yes.
It's all just taking humanity out of communication. Are you finding
Yes.
that that's been in the last like 15, 20 years since
Well, how
cell
about
phones in particular have taken over? What's
How
going
about
on?
even before that, a growing trend? I grew up in West Lynn, what they call the Brickyard.
Uh-huh.
And I call it Heinz vegetable soup, 57 varieties. Everyone was interacting with everybody else. There was no such thing as a computer. I had to make a date to push my button on my computer and learn another language. But I much prefer, like we're doing, talking and looking at one another.
People don't even like to use the phone anymore.
I know,
A
it's
real
a-
phone.
it's a shame. I say, call me on the phone. I do much better than my email.
One more thing before we get to your glass shard art, which is fascinating and beautiful, by the way. This week, Mariah Carey revealed she's bipolar.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that's a good idea for people of prominence to say it's okay
I
to...
can understand her, quote, quote, coming out. And in so doing, people who have issues emotionally have always been made to feel shame. But if I come out and say, I'm going to have this medication and this treatment and live normally, then I think it has a very positive
Right.
effect.
Nobody begrudges anybody if they need to take insulin for their diabetes,
Yes.
and this is no
Or wear
different.
glasses, like me.
Right. It's all right. So when you go home after hearing some stressful stories with some of your clients, what do? You can bring these out now and show us.
Well, this is a wonderful experience for me. First of all, I want to tell you I had brain surgery, and I'm a survivor of brain surgery. I'm a miracle. And
Tell me about this one.
this is a commission that I have to do Dr. Einstein. He's almost done, and he speaks to me. I'm very sensitive, and I hear the voices like the soul. And you had asked me to bring in my tools, which I
Right.
did.
Now, what you might not be able to see clearly at home is this is textured, so I'm going to actually turn it a little bit. It's glass shards. That's why it's called glass shard art. My
Layers.
gosh, layers.
Layers and layers of
And so
glass.
it gives it a texture and a body, and this doesn't really do it justice when you see it in a photo or in flat renderings like this. But tell us the technique now, because I
Well,
see some canvas here too.
Yeah, well, first what I do is I paint a picture. And then I decide, this is Dr. Einstein's face, and in this particular age. And
This is the way we all know him.
that is
You
how
know.
I've seen him. And this is layers of glass, and I brought some of the samples to show you. There are about 6 layers of glass, and each one is carved with my machine and then hand carved with my nippers. And I brought
You can actually cut yourself. It's glass, folks.
you should. Every picture I bleed, and I use some of my blood with some shadows, and so I decided that the background here is a very, very pale blue and white, very pale.
Oh, I see. Right in here.
Yes, that is textured, and I decided he would have a blue sweater, and so I knit a bit. And so I wanted to make the design of the sweater not fight and be complementary with the hair.
And this was a commissioned piece,
Yes,
you
this is a
said.
commission, it's
So
almost done.
why do we have it here? Oh, it's not quite done yet.
No,
All
no, you
right.
asked me to bring in a piece that is in process. This
Oh, I
is in
see. Yes,
process.
I see the painting is behind and you're layering on the
Right,
glass
I'm
now.
designing a sweater,
wonderful.
and I took off many times to get a particular design, and I brought the tools, and then.
So what do we have back here that we're going to be
this
bringing
is-
up?
My husband told me I could not call this lion Eleanor, even though the colors were mine.
Oh, this one I can't even take my eyes off it.
Wow, yeah.
And,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, my eyes. It's
Now, this is a lion. If you doubt it, I want to tell you, this is a lion. It was inspired by our visits to camera safari to South Africa a couple of years ago. And I love to do animals. I do cats, dogs, and I can paint anything if, on commission, small or big or whatever. But here you see, and what is most important to me is a picture alive? Is it alive? And I ask them all the time, are you done? Are you complete? And when they tell me I am complete, they are complete. And I think I finished up, he told me when I put his little yellow eyebrows on, I am complete.
That's very good. So what have you got started next after this commission?
Well,
piece?
after this, I have about 7 pieces going at once. I invited you to see my studio, which is about 5 minutes from here.
Yes, I
and I
will
have about
bounce in.
100 pieces with my gallery and my studio in my home. And
So how did you get started in this? Did
Well,
you say you developed this?
yes,
Nobody
I-
did this before you?
no, I think I'm almost all the way through my first book, and in the Whirled, on Introduction to Glass Shard Painting. I had brain surgery and I didn't want to die, so my spirit guide, I had an out-of-body experience, came to me and said, you won't die, but you're going to have to pay a price. You're going to have to learn to paint. Hello.
Well, this is a earthly mission to keep you going.
Yeah, you're not kidding. So
Who knows where our inspirations come from, really?
Isn't that
This is-
true? And or it doesn't have to say spirit guides, you can say angels. Everyone knows about guardian angels.
Mm-hmm.
And so 5 years ago, they came to me in my dream and said, "You've learned enough. Now go smash glass, and we will guide you." All right.
We've got maybe 3 minutes left.
Oh, all right.
Anybody here got some questions for Dr. Fisher?
You paint first and then apply the glass, or do you put the...
I have sheets of glass, and I have 3 diamond-bladed machines, water saws. And the heaviest ones cut stone and glass, very heavy glass. And then you see these curves? Each one is carved individually, and then I use my hand snippers to carve little pieces out of each one to curve.
I know a stained glass artisan, and they do some of the same cuts, but that's all flat, and then they put the leading.
Yeah.
You add 3D.
This is 3-dimensional, and you can see the different colors and the glass and the iridescence.
How long does it take for, I mean, I know you're doing many at once, but how long do you think it takes you
I
to do
will
something
tell,
like that?
I figured it out. If I did nothing for 1 month, 8 hours a day, that's about it.
Wow.
Now, I noticed Einstein is on a traditional canvas,
Yes.
stretched.
Yes.
But this one is a piece of plywood.
Well, because this one is finished in back.
Okay.
And this one is not.
All right.
And when it is finished.
So when you finish it, you'll put
My
plywood on the
husband-
back to make it
my
easy to
husband
hang.
has developed,
I see.
a way to finish it, and this has got resin, liquid polymer resin on it. Even, God forbid, it dropped on the floor, nothing would move.
All right.
I've sent these far away, and they're as pristine now as they will be in 30, 40, 50, 100 years. One of a kind. No, I can't make it again. That's all right.
No,
Hello.
it's glass, it would break.
No.
You know, we have less than a minute left. I just want everybody to say your name to the camera again so they all get to know who you are, and then we're going to wrap this up. We've whetted enough appetites here, I think. We just want to pique people's interest so that they research this more on their own. And remember, Eleanor Fisher has a website. You can visit that and go visit her, and make sure you talk to the GAR people and the brothers.
Okay, my name is
Sons.
Charles Lewis, from Chester Soldiers Home, and I'm a proud member of Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Al Smith. I'm Camp 5, Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. We meet at the Grand Avenue Republic Hall at 58 Andrew Street.
I'm Kevin Tucker, past department commander for the Department of Massachusetts, a proud member of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War.
Oh, yes.
And once again, Dexter.
I'm Dexter Bishop. I'm a past department commander of the Massachusetts and volunteer down at the Lynn GAR. Come on down. I'll be happy to give you a great tour. Come to spend more than 5 minutes.
And Dr. Eleanor Fisher, thanks again. I think I'll have you back. We'll do a little bit more psychology.
Wait a
and-
minute, how soon?
We'll look at the calendar. We'll look at the calendar. But we got to wrap this up. And until next time, in every way and every day, keep loving Lynn. Now we just sort of